righty.
And for those of you who don't know how to live with student loan debt, 120 grand right here.
Yeah.
Is that for law school?
Undergrad and law school, yeah.
Oh, undergrad and law. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
we are now live.
Most parents usually draw the line at postgraduate stuff. Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone I know who's had kids go on to med school or what, they're like, hey, that's
on you.
that's on you.
All right, Mr. Chair, we're ready to go.
All righty, we'll call the meeting of June 2nd, 2021 Planning Commission to order. And would staff call roll, please?
Connie Coleman-Lackady,
Present.
James Guerrero,
Here.
Paul Wagaman,
Present.
Ryan Pearson,
Here.
Philip Combs,
Here.
Lynn Larson,
Here.
Don Daniels.
Here.
You have quorum, Chair.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Before us, we have the minutes of May 5th, 2021. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Accept.
Mr. Pearson, I hear first for Mr. Pearson,
Second.
second by Mr. Larson, I believe, correct?
Correct.
Okay, great. Any discussion or changes? Hearing or seeing none at this time. All those in favor by saying aye.
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes passed as written of May 5th, 2021. Any changes to our agenda tonight, Ms. Spear?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Public comment at this time. Anyone wishing to speak to the commissioners? Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
I don't believe so, Mr. Chair. Is 1531 Ms. Devereaux's number?
Yes,
Okay, so there's no one online. Was there any written comment provided, Ms. Devereaux?
I did not receive any, no.
Okay, thank you.
Great. So seeing and hearing no one on Zoom, we'll close the public comment period. We have no public hearing tonight, and we have no unfinished business, so we can move right to number 8, new business. And first, I believe, is the 2022 to 2027 6-year transportation improvement plan. And we have Mr. Ted Hill with City of Lakewood to present in that program.
Yes, thank you. I hope you all can hear me.
Yes.
So Ted Hill, I'm the new Capital Projects Division Manager for the Public Works Engineering Group, and I will do my best here to share the appropriate screen. There we go. Are you seeing the cover page? All right, perfect. I didn't do so well at the council meeting, so I'm hoping to redeem myself in this. So again, I'm Ted Hill, presenting to you tonight the 6-year transportation improvement program. I affectionately call it the wish list. So I'll just get started. And I will preface it that some of these photos are almost a month old. So there are big improvements on the projects that I will be showing here in a second, just so you know. And well, I'm showing you the right screen, but it is not moving forward. Oh,
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so completed projects over the last year and some change, and we'll be finishing up here soon for a couple of them. 111, 112 from Bridgeport to Kendrick is under construction and should be wrapping up here, I think, by August at the latest. 100th Street and Lakewood Drive, the intersection, it is currently on hold waiting for the signal pole to show up. Everything else I think is pretty much wrapped up, just waiting for the signal poles. It is a long lead item, just taking a little time to arrive. 108 Bridgeport to Pack Highway overlay That one, if you haven't driven it in the last couple days, they should have wrapped up the second part of overlay today and put the temporary striping down, and it'll go on a hold for about 28 days until the final striping can be placed. But it should look nice and fresh and smooth as of today on both sides. Next up, Liquid Drive, Tilikum to Fleet Creek. That one actually should have received striping yesterday. We've only had a nice day that allowed them to put the striping down on the road. So that one is pretty much complete. Veterans Drive, Gravelly Lake to the VA entrance. That one's been done for a while. And I think even all the punch list items are wrapped up. And also Onyx Drive street improvements is all complete. All right, so little visual. It's always worth 1,000 words. So Onyx Drive sidewalks, there was some minor road widening, curb and gutter, associated storm, sidewalks, traffic calming, illumination, and ADA. And I will start sounding like a broken record because a lot of the projects here are pretty much doing the same thing to these streets. Veterans Drive, Gravelly Lake to the VA entrance, same, minor widening. This one had some roundabouts, traffic calming, curb and gutter, storm, sidewalks, illumination, and ADA. 111th, 112th, again, this is about a month-old photo. They are putting gravel down as of yesterday, so they're getting pretty close to putting the pavement on the road. But this project included curb gutter, storm, sidewalk, ADA, illumination, and still estimated to be completed by next month. 100th Street, this one is the one waiting for the signal poles. Again, a month-old photo, but all this should be all cured out now and looking a little better, and just waiting on the poles to show up, and estimated completion August of this year. 108th, this one's definitely a bit old now that they're putting final asphalt lifts on, but basically it was an overlay project. And when you do overlay, you're required to upgrade ADA ramps when you do anything of significant depth when it comes to an overlay. So if you're just doing a chip seal, you're not required. But when you're actually doing a kind of a mill and fill is the word they use on these kind of roads, where you're grinding down a little bit and putting more asphalt on top, you trigger requirements of upgrading your ADA to meet current standards. So this is a picture of a future ramp, which is now in place for ADA. But it had obviously ADA improvements, storm, pavement with the grind and overlay, and literally usable as of today. Liquid Drive. I said it was striped yesterday, but it also included some road widening, curb gutter, storm, sidewalks, a little grind and overlay, and is physically complete as of this week. So that concludes our projects that are done. So now we're moving to the projects we're going to add to the TIP. So again, the TIP is a wish list, and this is just a yearly update, which helps us to keep our wish list up to date, helps make the projects eligible for going after grant funds. Also, if a private developer comes in and is doing improvements along any of these stretches of road or projects, we can tag them to do the work if they are triggering offsite improvements with their projects. So our added projects, and you'll see that most of these are focused in the Springbrook area. So we have McCord Drive, Pack Highway to Bridgeport, McCord Drive, Bridgeport to 47th, 47th from McCord Drive to 127th, Lincoln Avenue Southwest from McCord Drive to San Francisco, Chicago Avenue from Springbrook to McCord Drive, San Francisco Avenue from Springbrook to True Lane, Clover Creek Drive, which is actually across Pack Highway from Pack Highway Hillcrest. And then we have one signal project, which is on Sharondale and Pack Highway.
And if I could, Ted, could you go back to that slide? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
That last item there, that Pacific Highway Sharondale intersection for the Planning Commission's benefit, is the one intersection improvement that needed to be made to implement the Lakewood Station sub-area plan. So they're doing it very quickly. It turned out able to be done very fast. So thank you. Thanks, Ted.
Yep. Okay, so a little visual, and so can you see my cursor?
Yes.
So all the orange lines are the proposed projects that I just listed, and the only one not shown is the intersection on Pack Highway at Sharondale, but you will see that here in a second. So to kind of help, again, visuals worth 1,000 words, each project, Port Drive, Pack Highway to Bridgeport. And again, broken record, since all these roads are pretty much existing, we're just bringing them to current standards with storm drainage and making them wide enough. And so this one is road widening, curb gutter, associated storm, sidewalk. We're proposing it only on the side, not the military side. So the actual side up against the houses is where we're proposing the sidewalk. Bike lanes, if we can fit them, illumination, obviously ADA compliance, and our current cost estimate is 1.46 million for that. And in the bottom corner of the screen, I also put a little key so you can see that stretch of road with regards to the layout of the area. Next up, McCord Drive from Bridgeport to 47th. Again, just a little stretch to the east side of Bridgeport. Minor roadway widening, curb and gutter, storm, sidewalk again on the residential side. Or in this case, I think that's actually like a gravel pit for one of the contractors in the area. Illumination, ADA, and our current cost estimate for that stretch is $220,000. 47th Avenue, so north-south off of Bridgeport, or I'm sorry, McCord Drive. Minor road widening, curb and gutter, associated storm, sidewalks, illumination, ADA, and current cost estimate is $400,000. Lincoln, which kind of is a crisscross through that area. Minor road widening, curb gutter, storm, sidewalk, illumination, ADA, and the current cost estimate is $700,000. Chicago Avenue, Springbrook Lane to McCord. Basically makes an X with the last one. Minor road widening, curb and gutter, associated storm, sidewalk, illumination, ADA. Current cost estimate is $740,000. And our current cost estimates are based on, I think it's about $2 million per lane mile. Since we are so preliminary, we just kind of associate a general number per lane mile. And that's how we come up with our initial cost estimates at this point in time. And we refine them as projects move further along and actually getting funds or going after grants. Next up, San Francisco Avenue Southwest, Springbrook Lane to True Lane. Again, minor road widening, curb gutter, associated storm, sidewalk, illumination, ADA compliance, and our current cost estimate is $440,000. So across Pack Highway is the only one that's kind of out of that neck of the woods, except for the intersection. So Clover Creek Drive, Pack Highway to Hillcrest. Minor road widening, curb gutter, associated storm, sidewalk, illumination, ADA compliance. This project is going to have to go in conjunction with the rail because obviously the rail is there. We'd only be able to do a little stretch up against Pack Highway and a little stretch up against Hillcrest Drive. So I did see an email from Sound Transit. Sounds like this is within their bubble that they'll help go after projects and try to fund projects. So we're just waiting to see where we shake with regards to the money that comes from Sound Transit.
Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Could I ask a question? I noticed on some of the photos, there was some parking that was in the shoulders. So when you do the new projects with curbs, gutters, sidewalks, you see all these, when you do that, there's not going to be any on-street parking then. Is that correct?
Correct. And we will have to work with those areas to figure out how to best accommodate. I mean, obviously the housing has been there for quite a while.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I heard my boss, Mr. Busich, talk about, like these places might get redeveloped before too awful long. You never know. But if it's still there when we come through, we will make sure we accommodate. It'll probably be some sort of angle parking, at one direction, so we can kind of maximize the amount of stalls we can fit.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. See if I can.
This is Connie. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Connie.
Mr. Hill, so I noticed that there's nothing in here on Gravelly Lake to Nyanza. That's something that's being talked about right now or happening soon. Is that part of this plan or is that something totally outside of this?
So that is already in the plan.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
the active construction projects were already a plan for project, and we're executing it. So it's, again, that one's on the wish list, and we're actually making it happen. And as soon as it's done, I'll hopefully be presenting next, probably the year after next, that we've completed it and we're removing it from the tip.
So when does it start and when do you project it to end?
They're starting here. Well, I think they got a little delay recently, is what I heard, and I want to say it's a year-long project. It's a lot of roundabouts.
Yeah.
And on a busy stretch of road, but they're trying to get a bypass lane configured at Nyanza right now, and they're running into a couple of utility issues. Once they can get that lane configured and worked out, then they'll start heavily on construction. But it's kind of, they want to make sure they have that. I don't want to call it a bypass, but it kind of is a lane constructed to help out with traffic flow before they start really taking away travel lanes.
Yeah.
So it's not projected to finish till next year, right?
Correct.
Thank
Great.
you.
Yep. And so last but not least is the intersection at Sharondale and Pack Highway. Obviously a little different than just our typical road project because it's concentrated intersection, but still same things, minor widening, curb and gutter, storm, obviously a signal installed here, illumination along with the signal, ADA for the ramps that we put in the intersection. And our cost estimate is $775,000 this time for that project. There's kind of the
Great.
two items put together. The blue projects or blue outlines are the projects that we were removing from the tip, and all the orange ones, which you saw earlier in the Springbrook area and right there at Sharondale, are our added projects for this 6-year tip.
Great. Any questions for Mr. Hill? Any additional? Mr. Guerrero?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a couple questions. One is on the item number 302.0158, the interlocking project. I see it listed here, which is great. Do you know if the intent is to have circles at the intersections, or has that been kind of worked out yet?
I don't think that's been worked out yet, and I apologize. I'm only 8 weeks into working here, so that one's been on the list since before me. So I need to get a little more up to speed.
Okay, that's fine. That was more a general question. And then there are two other items that I was interested in, and I suspect that they're really state issues because they relate to the work in Tilikum. So one is the exit on I-5 coming into Tilikum in Berkeley. It's constructed and it appears to be complete, but it looks to me like there's a conflict. As you exit the freeway coming into Tilikum at the Berkeley exit, you don't have a stop, and you can make a left-hand turn onto Berkeley.
Are you northbound or southbound?
Actually, so it would be northbound or southbound, comes across the freeway, and then it's coming down into Tilikum, and it swings around, and there's no stop, and you can actually either go left or right with no stop. The traffic coming from Union, coming up to that, basically up that same on-ramp, doesn't have a stop either. And so if someone's making a left coming off the freeway and someone is coming onto the freeway, neither one of them appear to be told to stop. So, but I'm guessing that's actually a DOT question, although if you had someone that you would talk to or someone I could talk to, I'd be interested in just relaying that, because it seems like there's a missing piece there.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure there is somebody.
Yeah,
I
understand.
here, I had a different point of contact when I was over in Puyallup, so I'll find out who the point of contact WashDOT is for this location and find. Yeah, I've only driven that twice now, and I have not come across the freeway. I've always been leaving Tilikum and entering the freeway. So.
Right. And then the other one, again, I think it's probably more a state question, but in the original plans, there was a pedestrian path between Tilikum and Gravel Lake Drive that was part of I understood that it was part of the funded work. And I was curious if that's still happening, and if so, what the schedule is. Again, I suspect not your area, but.
I have seen something on that. It was, yeah, paved trail, going to be wide enough to support like emergency vehicles if needed. I just can't remember the status I was told. That was, I think, week 1. They said something about that. I do recall seeing some maps on it, and it was going to run right along the freeway and connect. I'll have to look into that.
I actually think it's the last item that's going to get done. Yeah, I think it went from, because we had that question at the city council, like, why wouldn't you do that first? And they were like, yeah, it's going to be last. So, and I think it's just going to be a trail now. There was some controversy for a while because there was one design that had it going along the fort, and the fort was not excited about having a trail on its border. So, there's pushback on that, and we never wanted it there as a city anyway. We wanted it on the country club side, and I believe that's where it's going, but I believe it'll be the last item.
Okay.
And
thank
Mr.
you.
Chair, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll follow up with Mr. Hill to get Mr. Guerrero his answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
that would-
No problem. Any other questions for Mr. Hill? Mr. Combs.
Could you just include us, Tiffany, on all of the
Yeah.
answers there? I'm curious about that as well.
Yes, I will. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Mr. Larson.
Ted, I'd like to know if your boss has given you a time to learn the Lakewood streets and when there will be the test.
Good question. You have not told me. The streets are definitely throwing me for a little loop. I mean, I went to college here at Pierce. I worked over the industrial park, but I kind of had my, location I was going to and then driving back home. So I do need to learn some of these, the loops and drives, and yes, but
Well,
no test yet, as far as I know.
good luck. That'll be a while. Would you please send me your contact information? I have some stuff for your scouts.
All right, we'll do.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other follow-up questions with Mr. Hill? Seeing none at this time, I thank you so much, Mr. Hill, and welcome aboard to City of Lakewood.
Thank you.
Yes,
And I'm
Ms.
sorry, Mr. Hill, before you go, and members of the Planning Commission, just to remind you that the public comment phase is ongoing with the City Council on all of these projects. So if by chance you had any comments you wanted to provide to the City Council, they would need to be delivered to them by noon on Monday of this next week. So Monday, June 7th.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you again, Mr. Hill.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is the 221 Annual Development Regulation Amendments. Ms. Spear.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll share my screen. But before I do, very quickly, just letting you know, this is not the amount of changes that you saw last year, which was really a lot of development regulations needing update because of the prior year, the adoption of an entirely new 18A, an entirely new land use and development code. So last year was a lot of cleanup from having it in place for a year and figuring out where some tweaks needed to be made or where there had been errors or omissions. This year, there are some changes to 18A. There are no other code sections or titles being affected. And I'll walk through them quickly, but again, these are by no means the same scope of change that you saw a year ago. So one reason this occurs now on an annual basis is there is actually a language in 18A Chapter 30 that talks about once a year the comprehensive plan and development regulations in effect are provided to the assessor treasurer of Pierce County, just to keep things consistent between how they track parcels within the city and what the city has on record. And so going through this, you'll just see they're all, as I said, in Title 18A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 or 11, and then there's some Scrivener error corrections as well. The first one is to insert this map, and you may have seen this before, but what this shows is the city of Lakewood over here on the left of the map, but these purple lines and down into JBLM, this is the flight pattern for McCord Field and North McCord Field, and right here you'll see the clear zone in hatch marks, and then you'll see Air Corridor 1 or Accident Potential Zone 1, and then Air Corridor 2 or Accident Potential Zone 2. And we're just simply putting this into the code, so if someone is looking to develop anywhere adjacent to or even within AC 1 or 2, they can see how this map and this direction of flight, as well as the associated get the words right, Department of Defense's regulations or guidance may apply. So we're simply adding that in. There's a couple of spots in 18A10, which is the general chapter of the title about interpretations, referring people to 18A chapter 40, which is where land use and tables are included, and then talking about how the director's interpretations are appealable to the hearing examiner. A couple of changes with definitions, updating the affordable housing definition per the organization of the new 18A, and also reflecting some changes to statutory language. So what does affordable housing mean? This is what will be included in the code. A correction on the definition of antenna. We had two that were identical, and we're needing to include two different definitions here. Updating the campus facilities master plan, talking about the UW as authorized in 28B, and also low-income housing, referring to Department of HUD as a source of information. Moderate income household, update to that definition. Multiple unit housing, update to that. Taking out permanent residential occupancy definitions. Explaining what a residential target area is, and very quickly, that is where the City Council has identified areas in the city where the multifamily tax exemption program is eligible for use at the City Council's approval. What does substantial compliance mean for building or housing code requirements? What is an urban center? And then moving on from the definitions, clarifying that for form-based code review and decisions, what is the path for application and then decision and appeal? Now that we've got two sub areas, both of which are governed by a form-based code, this is more important to have. So 18A20-080 now reflects that fact. The interpretation of land use tables was talked about just a second ago up in the definitions, but this is just talking about how the director will have authority to make a determination. And then that the fact that that is appealable to the hearing examiner, and then reporting interpretation decisions to you, the Planning Commission, when necessary. The addition in commercial 1 of the allowed personal services outright. This right now is not included at all, and so this is adding a use to personal services. This, I believe, was an error with 18A several years ago. Within site planning and general development standards, correcting the fact that in the MR2 zoning district, the lot widths are a little bit different than what's applicable citywide. So just looking at 18A60-0380 to verify what lot width minimums might be in the MR2 zone. And then clarifying in 18A60-100 sub E, whether you round up or down, that was just an error we needed to correct. Parking changes, correcting a few things, adding a few things, deleting a few things in essence. Off-site parking lots must be legally encumbered pursuant to 18A89. Discussion about mechanical parking lifts and what those are, and you can allow them in commercial zones and multifamily development. Some additional conditions for those mechanical lift parking systems. Parking maintenance, discussion there under 18A80-025. don't think there's much more to say there. And then getting into wireless facilities, wireless service facilities, this is updating the requirements for eligible facilities based on a decision from the FCC. So just making sure our code is compliant with FCC decisions. That's it. So as it sits right now, tonight you're hearing about this. You do have a public hearing on this package in 2 weeks. And action is planned for July 7th, although if on June 16th you feel comfortable taking action following your public hearing, you're certainly able to do that, or you can keep it open, etc., and take action on July 7th. And then this will move forward to City Council beginning July 26th. Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention down here, as part of the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Amendment Package, if you'll recall, there was one of the amendments, it's number 04, that allows duplex and triplex development in the R1 through R4 zones and would allow multifamily development within the MR1 and MR2 zones. Right now, the City Council is talking about that, and at their next study session, there will be further discussion about whether this item should continue and move forward to passage this year, or if they're going to continue it into the next comprehensive plan cycle, in part to ask the Planning Commission to perhaps come up with design standards for duplex and triplex development in the R1 through R4 zones. So more might be coming back to the City Council, the Planning Commission regarding that one item.
Yes, okay. Any questions for Ms. Spear regarding Mr. Guerrero?
Yeah, I ran into a funny little piece of the code.
Okay.
It had to do with the NC2 zone, which allows duplexes and fourplexes, but not triplexes. And just this particular project, it probably doesn't matter, but I'm curious if there would be a reason why that would be the case, or if that's just a kind of
I am assuming that is an error. Yeah. Do you remember if that was in just the use table?
It is, yeah. And NC2 allows duplexes and fourplexes. Yeah. Okay,
thank you. I'll take a look at that.
Mr. Larson.
Keying on that, there was a place that I read that the multifamily capability in a single family zone was 1 to 1, 2, 4. And I would think that should include 1 through 4, so that anything 4 or less would be what was allowed, rather than having it be 3 or less, since it only went 2, 4. And I wondered if that we could look at that and make sure we have clarity there. Second point is that the first thing that Ms. Spear showed us was the map that showed the clear zones and everything like that. And that map is not zoomable. So if one wanted to see where one's property specifically was within the context of the lines in that map, you can't do it. And I would like to request that we make that map with a clarity that is zoomable. That'll make it much easier for the public to read and understand as well.
I can give that a try, Mr. Larson. However, that actually came from the Department of Defense. So I'll have to work with our city staff to see if they're able to reproduce it. But
Okay.
I'll be able to give you some kind of answer or provide the map to you by the time of the public hearing on the 16th.
Thank you. And I have a question that the low income definitions conform with current administration's determination thresholds from a federal housing standpoint. Are we in sync with those thresholds as with ours?
I will verify that, but I think that's one reason why the amendment is there. That actually came to me from other staff, so I will verify that for you.
Another point is that there should be a threshold determination available to the director as to its allowance of a conditional use. And I'd like to see if there was some clarity in that regard. It just seems it'll make it easier for everybody to work with if there is a rule established. On the other hand, maybe it gives them greater latitude if there isn't a threshold and gives them better ability to make a judgment call. But it was something that I noted when in my review there. And then we should allow for the appeal of a director's decision in the same manner that it was set forth earlier in the code, with uses that are not defined, so that we have a consistency throughout the rules in the document. And then we've got some parking ratios and allowance for multifamily. Again, I said the definition of multifamily is greater than 4 rather than greater than 3. And then the maintenance of the parking that's required in terms of if it's off-site, where do we have teeth that makes sure that that parking gets maintained in the same manner as it would if it were attached to the apartment complex or multifamily complex? And I'm new to the club, so I just don't know what the enforcement mechanism is there, but it seems to me that there should be some. And then the antenna regulations, my question is the wireless interface. Does that comply with the antenna regulations? Does that also apply to wireless? And those are most of my questions, except for a reference to what is a broken RCW. And
Yes.
I'd like to know what a broken RCW is.
That's the reference to the link. So the hyperlinks in the code don't work for one of
okay.
various reasons. Yeah. So
Okay.
it's either us correcting it on the website as you know, wonky as that might be, or it might actually be they've changed where a code section is numbered in the state code, and we just have to update it.
Okay. So
Otherwise, Mr. Larson, if it's all right with you, what I'm going to do is reach out to you and to Mr. Buer and try to discuss your questions and requests between now and the 16th and get some responses back, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other questions for Ms. Spear? Mr. Combs?
Yeah, just me again. Hey, I was curious about the UW master plan. That reference. Is there UW master plan in Lakewood?
I have to honestly go back and look why it says that, because I'm
Yeah.
not sure. And I don't know, Mr. Boki, if you would know.
No, I was curious about that reference as well.
Okay.
Mr. Coombs, thank you for bringing that up, because I was sitting here wondering if I was going to be an idiot not knowing that there wasn't the University of Washington in Lakewood as the new guy on the block. So thanks for taking the heat on that.
I'll clarify that for everybody,
Thanks.
including me. Thank you.
All right. No other questions in regards to that. Mr. Boki, do you have any reports or updates for us?
Yeah, just a couple of quick items. And as long as Tiffany's here, I think we did get the Western State Master Plan or some portion of it last week, and so it's that will probably be coming forward to these guys, right, at some point in time.
I honestly don't know if within the code the Planning Commission takes a look at that. It might go directly to the council.
Okay. Yeah. Well, at long last, it arrived, right? So it's taken them a while. And I was telling somebody today that I have come to, even though we have our battles with the Western State, I have come to a grudging respect for the work that they do and the folks at DSHS. I do sympathize with them to an extent in trying to get this mental health ship turned around in our state. And so hopefully it's a good plan and we don't have too many changes that we want to make to it, but we'll see.
There has been quite a bit of discussion between the city and DSHS before it was submitted, Mr. Boki.
Okay.
So hopefully that's the case.
Couple of items of interest. I think Mr. Wagaman's still on the call. The tip tonight. I just, so proud of what this city has done. And I remember sitting there with Paul. Well, it goes back over a decade when the then Transportation Advisory Committee, which was folded into this committee, was saying every year, like, hey, we need to do more for our roads. And I think they finally were heard, and hopefully we'll continue that work going on into the future. But be very patient. This Gravelly Lake Drive is the first of a 2-year project. We hope it's a 2-year project that will include Washington, but it's a major project, and it's going to take a long time. So you're going to hear all summer long from folks like, what are they doing? But this is one of those things that's tearing the road down and rebuilding it and really making it nice, and that connection that we talked about earlier to Tilikum, and somehow, making that pedestrian corridor so for the first time ever, we'll have a pedestrian corridor that will allow people to come from Tilikum, ride their bikes or walk and into Lakewood proper. So it really is a big deal to us. It's part of a plan. It's a heavily traveled road. It's in tough shape, and eventually we'll have to do the Nyanza side too. So thank you for your work on the tip. We had a meeting last week. The city manager was on the call. Ms. Spear was on the call too, right? Thursday.
Yep.
With the county, which included the county executive, Mr. Danmeyer, and the chair of the county council, Derek Young, and talking to all the cities about ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, and looking for some possible areas of cooperation between the cities and the counties. ARPA is much different than the CARES Act that we had last year. We have 4 years to spend the ARPA money. Or it's actually a little less than 4 years now, but to the end of 2024. And a lot of the things that the CARES Act money paid for is actually covered by other sources of money coming from the federal government. So things like rental assistance and various things like that are actually coming through different streams of money. It's a little bit broader, not real broad on what cities and counties can spend, but we're looking for areas of cooperation between the county and the city. Mr. Caulfield was on that call. Ms. Spear was on that call. The cities there's some level of interest at the city levels. We'll see where it goes. But anyway, we're working on it as a city council. We've asked that the city manager reach out to various groups and ask for some public comment as to what we would like to do with the money, which is, I think we got, just under $7 million this year, and we'll get another $7 million little under $7 million next year. So the last thing is on a happy note. I went to the farmers market, the Friday afternoon farmers market at Fort Tilikum Park. Please go. It was wonderful. The weather was great. The vendors are great. There's some food trucks there. I had a great time. I went with my son, and we just had a really nice time, and a lot of good vendors. And so it's a nice Friday afternoon in the park. So Friday evening, I think it went from 2 to 6 or something like that. So that's on a happy note, because we're actually starting to get back to normal. And I think we're going to start in-person city council meetings again, 1st of July or some thereabout. So.
Mr. Larson, you had a question?
I did. I wanted to chime in on the streets thing. The street program in the Springbrook area is going to do so much for the livability and attractability and future property value and just the livelihood of that neighborhood. And Mr. Bakke, I just can't thank you enough for your support and seeing your way through to make sure that set of projects there happens, because that has been a downtrodden part of Lakewood for a long time and not necessary. It's a great location, and it has some large lot sizes. It has some real capability for redevelopment there, and we're beginning to see that. So having those streets is going to uplift everybody's attitude who lives there, whether they're a renter or an owner. So you just watch what that does. That single element of improving the streets in that neighborhood is what it's going to do. I'm just excited as I can be about it.
Good. I will let the council know that. I am too. I think it's an area. Those streets will be a lot of work. By the way, they're not in that very good condition, so it'll probably be tear downs in some of those cases too, right down. But really looking forward to, I think as a city, we'll probably test the resolve of some organizations' DEI initiatives because it is a very low income area. There are a lot of kids in there. So walkability is an issue. I think hopefully that there'll be some opportunities to get some grant money, and then we'll have plenty of city money in there also. Whether or not we take it in bits and pieces or we do it all at once, we'll see.
It's a great spot for a Habitat for Humanity project or two. Build a couple new homes in there. There's enough land to do it, and a good job would be done.
Yeah.
Mr. Boki, if I could real fast, on our meeting with the council last week, Mr. Councilman Branstetter asked a question regarding that comprehensive plan amendment 01, climate change, the climate policies and implementation of those policies. I don't know if I clarified enough. He was asking, why did we put everything in there? Why would the commissioners just, go along and put everything in the kitchen sink? Well, I think the reasoning being is it was too hard to start picking and choosing and taking stuff out as a commission together. There wasn't a consensus. So they thought that my feeling was, the thought was let's leave everything in. That way it's possibility for availability of different grants if they're all in there. And then if the council said, hey, can you guys review, can the commission review this part, and we can digest that part and smooth it out or add to or change. But I think that was the real consensus of the commissioners, to just add everything and then work on the stuff later on, have the ability to work on it later on if there's a piece or part of it that needs to be massaged. So if you could relay maybe further, it was kind of hard. I didn't have any of the notes in front of me in Mexico. Okay. I was working off of the one little sheet, and I'm like, okay.
So it was mentioned, I think, that there wasn't a consensus because you did some kind of
exercise.
So, but I'll mention that it's something that could be taken up at a later date and digested. I like that word in parts.
Yeah. So maybe the exercise that Mr. Buer gave to us, it would be interesting if the council, did that same exercise and see the diversity in that same exercise, how different the answers really were.
Yeah, we probably need to do that because I don't know that we're of one mind.
Yeah.
So I do want to, I think that brings up a point. I really do appreciate, and I think the whole city council appreciates the work that this committee does, because things like the comp plan just keep getting more, they keep adding elements, right? The state keeps adding elements. And this is a great example. There's a whole climate change element. And I don't know, a year or two ago, you had some other element that had to be added. then the older elements that you had now have to have more parts to those. So really, thanks to the state of Washington, that the elements it's become a much more complicated job. Plus, as I mentioned, we added the tip and transportation to the planning commission side. And so we really do appreciate the work you guys are doing, because it has become a more complicated job, right? I think that you add these elements and it's like, well, we've never talked about this stuff before, and now we do. And then eventually we have to talk about it at the council level. So I really do appreciate, and I think everybody appreciates the work that this committee does, because it has gotten to be, tougher. I mean, the questions, I think, become harder, and we're in the midst of a lot of change. And so thank you.
Yeah, great. We appreciate that. Ms. Spear, Mr. Wegeman, yes.
Well, I appreciate all the comments, Lynn Larson's comments about the Springbrook area. I appreciate that. I think one of the areas, though, is as we talk about that, where are some people going to live in the future? As this stuff improves, the cost for people is very difficult. So, we've talked about that before. Affordable housing, James Guerrero gave us a presentation on, we spend a lot of money on parking. So if we could save some money there to make something that's affordable, otherwise, where do people go? I shared with John Caulfield earlier this week. I met with a council member from Gig Harbor, who will after the next election will be the mayor of Gig Harbor. She's got a nonprofit thing now that's working with landlords to rent properties, and then they manage people that are homeless in those properties. And I felt a little bit of pushback from John on that, but what do we do? I mean, because City of Lakewood, we've got Western State, and we go down the line, we've got a lot of adult family homes. And now if all of a sudden we use some properties to a place for a person that's homeless to get on their feet and get moving, how do you control that? So it's pretty interesting, because the reason I know about that is I work for a couple of landlords in Tacoma that are working to allow their properties to be rented to this nonprofit organization that's going to do that. So that's one thing. The other comment I'd like to make, and I appreciate you talking about the transportation committee. The thing that I worked on that was really fun was the non-motorized plan. And now with the Gravely Lake, being able to walk all the way around Gravely Lake on a sidewalk really makes that a good destination. I think that makes it almost compatible to what they have in University Place up there at Chambers Bay, for a place to walk. The downside is there's not a lot of places to park your car to be able to get on a walk around Gravely Lake, but certainly the sidewalks are nice and wide. And that's going to be really nice. Unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit of time before that's totally done, but it certainly makes a difference. So at least the part of Gravely Lake now that we drive by that's finished, pretty unique. I see people walking on there a lot, and I'm sure that's going to really pick up. So, thank you.
So a couple of items on that. There will be parking in front of Lakewold Gardens, and it will be public parking. So that because they need more parking, and we're putting it in so that people can access that walking area.
Great.
There won't be a lot of spots, and if they have something going on at Lakewald, there won't be any, but it's like 22 spots or something like that. Ms. Spear might be able to correct me, but there is that in front of Lakewald, that Lakewald's giving some property for that, so that we can encourage public access along there. The non-motorized plan is something that came up the other night at council. Somebody said something, it needs an update. It's old now. A lot of things have been done on that plan, but there was, I think it was Councilmember Branstetter that said, yeah, I think it was at our last retreat. And I didn't realize it's been a while since there's been an update of it. I remember when it was first done in 07, that's long before I was on the council. I think the Planning Commission put that together. I think then Councilmember Whalen was on the Planning Commission at that time, and they did a great job. They did a great job on that plan. I really do think but it's due for an update, it sounds like. So that may be something that may end up on your work plan in the next, or was it at the meeting when you were on, Don? I thought maybe it came up at the retreat. It's probably going to be working its way through in the next year or two for an update. Because non-motorized money, there's money out there for non-motorized things. We also got some safe routes to school money for some additional spots, and one of them is by Clover Park High School on 112th there, Paul, just for a block or two from Gravelly Lake to one of the other streets. On one side, I think we've got some money for sidewalks. We just won that. I can't remember where the other places were. And then what was the last thing you mentioned?
The affordable housing, was that it?
Yeah, affordable housing. You're going to hear a lot about it. The legislature's talked about it. Part of what Ms. Spear talked about earlier is, the duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes on R1, R2, R3, and R4 properties. What the impacts are of that in affordability in general. That's going to be part of the ARPA discussion. There's a lot of talk about it. It's going to take a while, and housing is a problem. It really is. And the city council for a long time has said they felt that Lakewood has had it more than its fair share of low-income housing. So when low-income housing discussions occur, we are very cautious. That's how I would put it. We're very cautious. That's what we feel like that we've heard from the voters. That we're always talking about balance. That we need better balance in our housing, and we're very cautious. And to be quite honest, we're, at least in my case, a little bit I don't know, cynical sometimes when people start talking about low-income housing, but they're not really talking about their city. They're talking about Lakewood or Tacoma or Parkland, where it already exists. And so there has to be policy level decisions made about, you want more housing, what kind of housing, who, what, where, and how is everybody taking their turn? So there's a lot of tough questions surrounded around supply, but we're certainly open to low-income housing if it's going to be well run, if it's going to be well built, and that kind of thing.
Great.
Well, I think, Paul, on that is that with any housing situation, there has to be good accountability. I mean, nobody likes a neighbor that's got it all trashed up. It just hurts everybody at that point in time. So, but also, how do we help some people that are going through a tough time in their walk through life? And I agree with Mike Carroll when he was alive, when he did the whole prison thing, that Pierce County shouldn't be the dumping ground for every prisoner that's being released. But there needs to be a place for prisoners when they're coming out of incarceration. Right. If we believe they're being reformed, if that's true, then they need a place to be able to get back on their feet. But it shouldn't all be in one community. So I agree with you on that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Boki, Councilman Boki. Ms. Spear, do you have any updates?
Just a couple of things. Next meeting, as I said, in 2 weeks will be the public hearing on the development regulations we just went through. And then the meeting after that, July 7th, is going to be a special meeting where you're going to be joined by members of the Community Services Advisory Board and some other groups as well to talk about the American Rescue Plan Act. One of the things, as Mr. Boki mentioned, is a community outreach effort to get expertise and varying opinions gathered and given back to the city council so they can make an informed decision how to spend the dollars coming to the city over the next few years. And so you are one of the first that we're going to present to and seek your input about. There are 4 basic areas where the dollars are eligible to be used. And so we'll go over that. And then we're just going to have hopefully a good free flowing discussion about your opinions. And this doesn't have to be the Planning Commission thinks. This could be each of you individually providing information about how you think dollars should be allocated. So you'll get more information, but that'll happen in July. And then at this point, we are not seeing any need for a second time in July or any August meetings for the commission. So you would have July 7th and then you would be off until September.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
it, Mr. Chair.
All right, any other commissioners have comments or?
So we're meeting on the 16th is our next meeting then?
Yes, 2 weeks from today, yes.
Okay.
Great, okay, and seeing or no other further discussion, I will call the commission meeting